So there are a lot of different fields that you can track on your anesthesia record. There's check boxes, there's radio buttons, there's drop down values. Timestamps is a big one. One of the timestamps, it's a bit unusual, is the anesthesia ready time. And it's a question that we frequently get. What is that? Why should we track it? It's taking time away from me to have to put that in. What difference does that actually make? Billing isn't concerned about it. What are we going to do with that? And I think to understand that question, to answer that question, we need to zoom out a bit and recognize that in any industry, healthcare is no exception, in any industry, you have perceptions versus data-driven decision-making. And the reality is in anesthesia that perceptions rule the day. We do not typically have measurable workflows and outcomes to base our decisions off. We just don't consistently measure that. And so in the absence of the data, the personalities are going to prevail, right? Politics drive the conversation, which may not be a bad thing. You may have fantastic, personalities and constructive politics in such way that you're making the right decisions, but you also might not be, right? You might be actually making things worse for the patient, worse for the bottom line. You just don't know. One of my favorite examples is you're in a monthly meeting, some type of committee meeting, and a surgeon makes a complaint that anesthesia is too slow. And, how do you respond to that? A charge has been made. It's not a favorable, label. Is it true? Should there be any pushback? And typically what you see happen is the anesthesia representation, assuming you're even invited to the meeting, will say, well, there are many reasons for an anesthesia case to be delayed, and who knows what's actually happening, right? But in the absence of that data, it can become a very kind of confrontational conversation. There's an accusation made, there's a defense made, versus a collaborative discussion, which is, well, let's look at the facts, let's look at the reports and the data and see. Or perhaps you reach out to the surgeon at that time and you say, well, can you offer some more details? What do you mean too slow? And it has nothing to do with turnover time, but perhaps they had more specific complaint and they say, well, the nerve blocks are taking too long in my room. Like, well, okay. I mean, really, the only way to address a concern or a complaint like that, and you see it all the time, is to look at this thing called anesthesia ready time. And the way we define that is it's the time the anesthesia team is finished with their work right at the beginning, right? So it's the time period from when the patient came into the OR until induction is complete, vascular access is complete, any regional or neuraxial blocks are complete. It's when we're done with the patient, so to speak, and we hand over to the circulator nurse and say, you can do your part. And that part typically is positioning and padding and prepping, everything that they need to do in preparation for the cut, right? The cut time. And so that anesthesia time, if you have that, then we can do a lot. Now we can offer reports comparing anesthesia ready times across all patients when they did get a block and when they didn't get a block. If you want to, you can aggregate just that one surgeon's cases to say for all of your cases, and say there's 40 cases, here are the 20 cases with a block and here are the 20 cases without a block. How do you compare their anesthesia ready time? What if we looked at the distribution of those anesthesia ready times for each of the 20 cases? What we see happening time and time again is the average block can take 4 or 5 minutes. And so maybe 18 cases are 4 or 5 minutes, but there are 1 or 2 cases that are outliers, significant outliers. Maybe they take 15 or 20 minutes. And it's those 1 or 2 cases that are informing that opinion at that meeting to say anesthesia is slow or nerve blocks are taking too long. But once you have that once you have that timestamp and you have the reporting capability to look at those distributions, it changes the dynamic in the conversation. And now you can suddenly ask, well, here's the delay it's actually causing. If we look at the average across all of them, let's say it's 5.5 minutes, the consequence of that 5.5 minutes for those 20 cases is that we have increased patient satisfaction, we have a decreased length of stay at our hospital, they have decreased use of the PCA, they're quicker to ambulate, all of the things that we know are the reasons we want to be doing regional blocks. But now the question comes to the hospital administrator about, is that delay, that extra time, worth the benefit? And rather than it's anesthesia, it's a personal issue, it's me that I'm too slow, it becomes here is what the data shows the actual delay is, And is that worth this benefit? And once it's, that's the question. It's yes or no. It's less about me and more about what do we want to do as a hospital? What type of service do we want to provide to our patients? It's more collaborative, and we see it time again. It's just without the data, without a question like anesthesia ready time, you end up in a world of just competing opinions. And in today's world, we can do better, and we should do better.